Welcome to another episode of the IBC Guys. It's a special day. One, if you are watching on YouTube, you may notice Mike Stevens is not here. Mike, for the first time in a long time, months, all of his boys are home. So we gave him the day off. He's not getting paid this week. He won't get his salary, but we have special guests, which makes it maybe even a little better. Don't tell Mike that. But we have Jonathan and Carissa with us today. And so I'm really excited to talk with them because they utilize IBC. And we're going to talk through how they do that, what their story is, just to get to know them a little bit, and really hopefully hear a different perspective on IBC. So I'll quit yapping, say hi to you. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, Carissa.
Hi.
So let me that was great. Way to do it. Let me go through the podcast stuff, and then we'll jump into really what people are here to listen to. It's not me. But we do this podcast for three reasons. One is to get information out there. If you learn about IBC, feel like you understand it, and you decide it's for you, awesome. We're here to help. If you decide it's not for you, great. Go use the Lord's money how you want it. The second reason is to provide tangible examples. I think we're accomplishing that today with Jonathan and Carissa being on the podcast. They're going to give us maybe some different perspectives, ideas, how they're utilizing it, what it's done for their family. So that'll be accomplished readily and easily. The third one is to get this information out there as much as we can. So if you would share, subscribe. Our social media is down there. Contact us. I'm doing a better job getting the comments. So leave us a comment. I think last week we did the puppies, so those are still rolling in. Is Dave going to leave with a puppy or not? So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and that'll give you some context. But share with your grandma. My wife was talking to the hairdresser the other day about IBC. So whomever, feel free to share it. It just helps get the information out. All right, that stuff out of the way. Oh, I didn't do phone number and email. That's in the show notes. We have those phone number. I want to take as much time as I can with Jonathan and Carissa. So to be fair, I do have a closer relationship with these two. Carissa is my sister. We look nothing alike. So again, if you're watching on YouTube, you would not guess that. But she is my sister. She's the youngest of four. I'm the oldest. And then her husband, Jonathan, is joining us today. But like I said, my goal is to not talk as much. But my first question, and kind of getting this rolling, is if you would just give us some context, who you are, um, your life, what it looks like to be Jonathan and Carissa.
Like from the beginning of time?
Yep, when you were born, Jonathan. Yes.
That's a lot. Well, I guess I'll start. I think my story begins, at least as it connects to IBC, when I was 17. I joined the military and had to get a vehicle. So I realized quickly I want to have a family. I remember distinctly talking to the sales rep, like, I need to get a four-door car because I'm going to put kids in this thing and I need to be able to do that. As if my first car was going to be the car that I put kids in, but that's where my head was. And so, yeah, I saved diligently. I wanted to buy a house because, again, I want to have a family, and was able to put a significant amount of cash down as a down payment. Opted into a 15-year mortgage to aggressively pay that debt off, Dave Ramsey style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Felt like that was the way to do that at the time. Was very proud of being able to do that. Similarly, started a Roth IRA when I was young, while I was in the military, and started saving for the future. Not sure what for specifically, but that's just what you're supposed to do. So I did that. Glad that I started that. And then we got married in 2013. Mm-hmm. Shortly after that, we bought a business, and that was kind of the first big, aside from a mortgage, our first big need for capital. And so we took out a HELOC from what we had invested into the house. We also had a private loan, and were able to purchase into the business and be able to start making, our own income through that. Was very enjoyable. And after that, we had four kiddos, basically within the span of 3 years.
2 weeks, it feels like. It goes fast. It goes fast.
Crushed through it. And nine, our oldest just turned 9, and I asked him the other day, I'm like, you have the best mommy in the world, don't you? And he's like, no. I'm like, no, who's better? Who's a better mommy? And he goes, Nana.
Painfully honest.
I was like, okay, well,
Close
but
enough.
essentially you've got the best mommy in the world. So, he was funny with that, but I have a 9-year-old suddenly. And you really start to think, our kids are growing up. 9 is halfway to 18. Once your kids are 18, you've spent 90% of your time with them. So that's kind of sobering. But we've been kind of thinking in our business ownership. So we sold the business a couple years ago. We started a land investing company, same time you guys did, Dave and Jess.
Sure.
Pretty much right in that same window. We kind of went through that process together of learning and getting excited about that. And shortly after that, learned about IBC. Well, we've already spent quite a bit of money buying land. And when we learned about this, it was kind of like, I wish I would have known about this, because we could have started our infinite banking policies and then bought the land and have not spent the money. It would have stayed in it would have stayed with us. So that was kind of the first takeaway of how IBC works, and our first exposure to it. And then in our land business, it's just the constant need for capital, and very thankful that we have those policies started now. We're headed into our second year, starting with those. So I'll let you share a little bit about.
But Jonathan has been very future focused, very inheritance focused, very let's leave a legacy for our family since he was very young. So he has had that a long time, and we both grew up with a very Dave Ramsey, do not get debt, cash is king, don't buy anything that you can't afford, very, very strict. So when we first heard about IBC, it was at a land conference, and we had a lot of friends that did it, that we trusted, but it was very this can't be legal, this can't be right, this is too good to be true. So we heard a presentation about it, and we were very intrigued because we had a very significant use case for it. But we were not sold. It was too good to be true. So we were very hesitant.
Well, a part of it was, you can't just, at least at the time, I tried to Google IBC, and it's hard to find information from a source that I'm familiar with. So it's hard to learn about it. And the source that we did know about, you had to pay to get a basic understanding of it. So I was really skeptical at that point. So we did enough research, headed into the second conference that we were going to, and this was the one with Dave and Jess that we went to, and we were ready to pay, I think it was $500 or something to get into the course to learn about it. And we're going to talk to the representatives that were at the conference. And that's when we ran into Mike. And Dave, I think you had already started talking with Mike, and you were like, hey, you guys have been talking about IBC. I just met somebody who knows how it works. He's a licensed IBC practitioner. He wants to sit down and share, answer our questions and everything. So we sat down for 3 hours.
It was a long time.
With Mike, and just drilled him. I was skeptical.
I would say Mike can turn an hour conversation into 3 hours. I think maybe that's what happened. No.
Yeah. But I mean, I very distinctly remember we were just peppering him with questions, and he kept explaining, and there was a instant switch in my brain of that makes sense now. And it hadn't made sense. So it was a light bulb moment of what in the world? Why didn't we know this sooner? And why didn't it make sense? But it took about 6 months.
Yeah.
For 6 months for us to initial hearing about it to actually the light bulb moment. It took a while, because I think we were so into the Dave Ramsey, no debt. This can't be good. This can't work. So it took a while, but when it turned on, it was, you couldn't really turn it back off.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question to that end. I'm sure people are, I guess a couple thoughts run through my head. So I'm sorry, I'm mumbling. But I want people to be encouraged as they're listening to this, that it takes time. That's the same as that. It probably took us longer. I think you guys jumped into your policies before we did, if I remember correctly. I don't know the exact timeline, but think you jumped in because you had that light bulb moment. It took
Once we're ready, we pretty
maybe
much jump.
slower, your slower brother more time to process. We'll put it that way. But I guess I want it to be an encouragement to others that it takes time. The Dave Ramsey piece is interesting. And I don't know, I want to use him too much, but the idea of debt is bad. There is a loan component to this, but I would almost qualify it as not really being a loan. It's different than most people understand loans to be. So we can spend some time talking about that maybe in a different podcast. We'll have to have you guys back on with that. But I guess I want people to be encouraged. It's different in that way as well. But once you understand, if you take the time, and I would also argue there's a humbleness aspect to it. That if you can humble yourself and say, maybe I don't understand everything, and you take the time to learn it. Their light bulb, I've seen it in other people too, and it's really fun. As a former educator, I taught math for years, and to see that light bulb go off, I got to do it more often teaching math because there's a linear curriculum. But IBC world, same thing. So it's really fun to hear you guys say that, and I think I visually remember. Maybe it's because you've told the story to me, Chris, but watching that light bulb go off and that we just kind of
I think I was
commandeered a
pretty dramatic
conference
about
room.
Oh,
it
yeah.
because it was. I
We
tend
just
to
took
be a little
over an
dramatic.
empty conference room and sat there for
Yeah.
3 hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just peppered them with questions.
Yep.
And the last thing is, Jonathan, you mentioned it. Most often, this is not, I don't think people perceive it as accessible. One, you have to have a practitioner that wants to do it. The commissions are not great. We're not in this to make money. I think I've talked about that on the podcast before. But oftentimes, to sit down and even learn about it, excuse me, it costs money. So you have to put money in about something you don't even know. So Mike and I try and alleviate that hurdle, like get it on here. Again, Michael talk to you forever as long as you let him. So please feel free to call, ask. Let us give you the opportunity, or give us the opportunity to let you pepper us with questions. We'll do the same thing that we did to Mike that day. But yeah, it's really fun to hear your perspective, and I've heard it before, but to hear it again is again encouraging, and I want people to hear it from you all too. But you alluded to it already, Jonathan, uh, and how the reactions from people as you've talked about this, as you've kind of explained what you're doing, and you've studied this thing, so you're able to articulate it well when you discuss it. What are people's reactions?
Yeah, I mean, there's a myriad of reactions. I think the predominantly when I start getting into it, people just glaze over
Yeah,
and they just check out because I start talking about stuff. First of all, finances. I think people are intimidated maybe a little bit by that topic, but you start drilling into specifics in finances, and I think it's if someone's well versed on it, we can have an interesting conversation, and then they don't glaze over so much, but they'll usually move into, I don't think that this can actually do what you're saying that it does, or it's illegal, or it's a scam
yeah,
or something. So then we kind of talk through, well, if you look at the mechanics of how it works, if you start to learn about some of these things, you'll see that it makes sense. It all comes together and it adds up. There's just quite a bit to it to get there. When you start talking about it's tax free and you don't have to pay a loan back. Caveat that a little bit, but the loan just in and of itself, you may have to borrow. I have to pay an interest rate to borrow the money that I'm saving. That misunderstanding where it's not your money that you're borrowing. Your money's never interrupted the compounding. It just lives and compounds uninterrupted. You're borrowing against it. All the different pieces that come together to the people just haven't thought through in some of those dimensions. They find it hard to believe. And then more recently, the reactions that I think I've had are people are some of the people I'm talking to are understanding and curious and just kind of weighing it out as an option, which I don't disagree with. There's a couple different ways that you can handle your savings and house your cash somewhere. But I don't think that it sinks into, like, this isn't just a savings account that sits there. It's not an investment either. You get a little bit of both of those, but you also get the best of both of those. And then you also can use that money. You know, I think of trying to communicate, if I have a Roth IRA that's sitting there, that's a chunk of change that I can't use for a long time still. Not as long as it used to be.
You're very young, yes.
But I want to use that money now. You know, I think the small amount of money that I was able to save for my Roth IRA versus what we made investing in ourselves with the businesses that we've started, there's no comparison to that. And sure, there's risk and there's different things you have to take into consideration. And not everybody is a business owner, but I would almost say, you know, the IBC is your free business opportunity. A little bit of research and knowing how it works for sure is necessary, because if you don't, you could get yourself into some things that you don't understand. But, you know, to kind of speak to some of the reactions there is, you just don't understand it. I don't think someone that doesn't end up at IBC, you know, it's not for everybody at the time that they're at, but I think everybody could get to the point where it makes sense in some regard.
And we get a couple comments of like, well, you guys have a use for it because you're buying land and you're doing, but we don't have a use for it. And then the next week they'll say, oh, our car broke down and we just had to buy a new car. And it's like, you could have used that, you could have used IBC for that. And then it was, well, you know, we need this chunk of change right now. So we can't put it in there and wait for it to grow. We need it right now. And it's like, but you should, you know, but then it'll stay with your family. That chunk of change will stay with your family. And so there's just a couple like, but once again, like, why would we, like, some people just look at the first year and say, why would we spend, you know, you put in 10K or whatever it is to have a chunk change put towards underwriting and everything, and then only have a little bit left. Like they get stuck on the first year rather than looking for the future and for the investment of your family and the death benefit, but the cash flow until then. So I think there's a very like pay the debt we have, pay the bills we have, which is good. Like Dave Ramsey's good for getting you out of debt, but I would say IBC would be too. But Dave Ramsey's a really good get out of debt. But once you're out of debt, or once you have, you know, income flowing, like what are you going to do with that? So anyway, there's just kind of a lot of conversation starters that everyone starts at a different spot.
Well, and I get those same reactions. And I guess I want to use that as a hurdle into another question I have for y'all. You mentioned, you know, the land business. I've talked about our land business quite a bit on this podcast. If do you use IBC in other capacities? And if you do, would you be willing to share? Maybe outside of a business, how are you using IBC?
Yeah, I mean, I think primarily we use it in our land business. So we'll buy land, we'll take policy loans, buy land, and kind of, you know, supplement as we sell property, put it back in. That's probably our biggest use for it. And I think probably the most obvious, you know, that when our friends recognize that we have a specific use for it, that's what they're thinking. But alternatively, we also do hard money loans with it, and, you know, would take, you know, you do the math in your head, and we're still kind of in this. Like I say, it took us 6 months to get to the point where we were able to pull the trigger on starting our own IBC policies, but we haven't stopped researching it. And I'd say 2 years in, two and a half years in, close to 3 years maybe, I would say I know probably about 90% of what I want to know with it. And I'm still digging into stuff. We just had a call the other day, Dave, you and I and Mike, and trying to look at how to use this in our church. If it makes sense to use it in a church that's already tax exempt, and the death benefit isn't as attractive directly. I'd say it still has definite value and really a need, but, you know, there's so many different things that you can use it for as a person and as a business. But how does it work in a church? It's a little bit different. So wrestling through that, but you know, I think the thing that I gravitated to the most when it kind of clicked was the Roth IRA that I started many moons ago. I want to use that money eventually to have an inheritance that I could pass to my kids. I'd love to have that. And there's a lot that goes into that. But I need to use the money right now for other things just in life and for the kids, maybe even. And I think IBC kind of locks in the inheritance amount because I'm going to die at some point, and then that's just the best transfer of wealth, and that's the inheritance. But I can still use the money in the meantime without losing any of that. You know, if the policy loan reduces it by a little bit, and I'm diligent and I pay that back, the growth and the compounding is far exceeds any other vehicle. And so there's a little bit of diligence to fully maximize it, but there isn't this necessity like there would be with the HELOC. I have interest that I pay every month with the HELOC, and I have to pay the whole thing back within 10 years. You know, I have a lot more flexibility with my policy loans. And to some extent, it flips the cart a little bit because I'm more diligent with my own bank because it's mine. And I want that financial growth to be there so that I can pass that, you know, so that we can pass that along to our kids someday. And that being kind of like the ultimate use for it. We got into the land business thinking this will be a good way to kind of build some passive income, and we can add this IBC thing in to kind of help that. But then we quickly realized, no, it's kind of the other way around. We have our land business, which helps us fund this IBC policy, because really the end goal in some regard with our money is we want to be able to use it for God's glory and to be wise stewards of it while we're alive. But we also want to teach our kids that and give them some really cool tools to be able to do that in such a broader capacity when we're gone, and they're able to do that. And not only do we have policies on us that we'll give to our kids, we've already started policies on our kids that we'll leave an inheritance for our children's children.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think the real win is if we can teach our kids biblical stewardship, and they can do the same to their kids, the wealth that the kids will have to steward will be a great responsibility, but hopefully they'll be able to do great things with it.
Because like we wanted that for the kids, and like that for us is their like part of their college education. It might be the down payment on their house. It might be their first car, but something that we can already start them not depending on a bank when they need those things, but they can start depending on their own bank and learn right away how to do this for themselves and be able to help them along the way. And we'll pass that responsibility on to them at a certain age, and they get to pay their premium if they, you know, if they want to do that. And but yeah, just very simple future thinking down payment things.
If I can piggyback on that, I was having a conversation yesterday with an estate lawyer. And I was reminded of this fact. We were talking about these insurance policies, these whole life insurance policies, and they were very interested in how we were leveraging it. But what I was reminded of is when that estate lawyer is talking to whomever about it, it's not the premiums that have gone in. They want to know the value of the policy itself. What's the death benefit coming out? So the idea struck me again. If you put in, to use your number, Chris, $10,000 a year, depending on the person, let's say that's $500,000 death benefit. That's the net worth that the estate lawyer would ask about. So for $10,000, and it's not 1 year thing. It's not what I'm trying to say, but you are purchasing a net worth that at the end of your life, which will happen, you will die. That is the number that they are concerned with. So it just kind of hit me as, if I can fund these things, to your point, for my kids, they go into the trust that we have set up. That trust then manages it according to our wishes. There's some stipulations around getting the money for our kids, but also the policies that we have on our kids, that is blessing our grandkids. So we're talking generational wealth from the things that we're doing right now. We work hard in our land business. We work hard to put, you know, the funds into these things, but they are long lasting. And we've done a podcast on it's called Shirt Sleeve to Shirt Sleeves, and statistics show by the third generation, the money that has made, like you and I would make, is gone. It's gone. And how do you circumvent that? And to your point, biblical values, teaching your kids. So I think that those points are well made. So it just struck me talking to that lawyer that that's the number they're concerned with is the death benefit, because that's what's going to pay out, not necessarily the premiums that you've put in. And going back, we can build these things so you fund them, they'll self-fund themselves if you leave the the premium in there after the 4th year. It'll fund itself, and you can start another policy and buy more net worth. So again, that's probably another topic for another time. But there's so many benefits. I want to jump back to something you said, Chris. You were talking about people's reaction like buying a car. I do want to iterate again that this is not an investment. Jonathan said it. It's not an investment. By definition, the IRS looks at it as an asset. It is an asset, but it is an asset that does and can fit into anybody's life.
Mhm.
So I was meeting with someone yesterday. He's a client already, and he came to me, and he has a finance person, is what he called them. I don't know who they are. I don't know where they exist, but his word was livid, that he got into a whole life policy. Livid. I said, well, I can understand that. Some people have been burned by it, but let's go through the numbers again. So we went through all the things you all described. It took us the time to figure out, and we went through it and went through it. And by the time that conversation was done, he asked how he could get another policy on his wife. So it's not a scheme. It's not too good to be true. I get that, not all the time, but there are people out there. I had someone tell you're just in it for the money. There's a commission to it, but it's not paying my bills. We'll put it that way. One of the last ones I did was, I think I made $200 after all the licensing was done, and like it's not. We're doing it to help people out. So it can fit into people's lives. You don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to own a business. Again, I've shared examples: cell phones, car payments, things like that. So when I talk to people, it's a lot of fun to see how it can fit in. You guys are doing a good job with it, and running it through the things that your family does. And to your point, it's a cash flow system. You're running it through here. You're using the money anyway, but that money is then making money as we go along, building the debt and fit. So sorry, I'm pulling a Mike Stevens and getting talking. Jeez. All right. I do have one more question, Jonathan. You are a well-read individual. So, and I know you've been reading about IBC. Do you have any book recommendations that people maybe could look into if they're interested in learning more?
I'm glad you asked, Dave. Yes.
We may have prepared for that question.
Yeah, I got a stack of books here. Probably should have moved these over before.
That doesn't matter. Holy cow.
He loves reading about this topic.
I think, the staple book, Becoming Your Own Banker, is kind of the starting point. That's where you kind of learn how the nuts and bolts work, and you see a lot of
the Genesis, Nelson Nash.
Yep, that's a big one. And then similarly, the case for IBC, I think this is, in my opinion, the easiest way to wrap your mind around it, the fastest, with the most updated information as far as like the figures go. Found that one really beneficial. How privatized banking really works. This is an intriguing read that gets into IBC with as kind of like the secondary piece of it. It's more about inflation and some of the issues with regular banking and some of the realities there when, we think, well, I give this huge premium to a life insurance company and the money's gone. I don't have money. Yeah, I can borrow against it, but it's not my money anymore. And it's telling you, well, it's the same way at a bank. You give your money to the bank and they owe you that money back, but it's their money now. And then the FDIC will insure up to 250,000, which I think for most people they're thinking, well, that's fine. But at some point it won't be, hopefully. Another one kind of along those lines, In the Fed, similarly, Secrets of the Federal Reserve, which I haven't started this one yet, but it is kind of along that line of, the banking side and inflation, stuff like that.
Really, it's what we've been told versus what actually happens.
Yeah.
The banks are very good at marketing.
Which sounds very conspiracy theory. It absolutely does. But once you study it for yourself and you get out of, maybe you graduate thinking a little bit. You get out of the idea of, this is what I was taught in my high school financial literacy class, which there's nothing wrong with those things. I have a 401k, I have a Roth IRA, I have a traditional IRA, I have a 403b. Like, I have those things, and I actually do. And I wish I would have combined them all into one. They're just in different pieces. But this is the best method to do it. So, Jonathan, I'm getting going again, but I do want to ask you a question. During the volatility of the stock market the last couple of days with all the tariff stuff, I have not panicked once. I want to know what your impression is. You're a good chunk of your money in IBC. Have you felt any of those ramifications?
That's a good question. I mean, when it did its sharp drop, I thought, oh, hey, this would be a great time to take out a policy loan and buy cheap Delta stock, or whatever, and watch ride it up. But like, that's probably not the best way to do this. But
that is a great point. IBC is not mutually exclusive. Run your money through the policy and then go buy your investments. It is not an and or situation.
Yeah.
So again, that's another podcast. You guys keep giving stuff to talk about. All right, but keep going with books, Jonathan. We got a couple here.
I mean, there's a bunch of them that I haven't read yet, but they're kind of along that same line of like what's really going on in the banking industry and why becoming your own banker has value just in and of itself. Building your own cash flow system. I'll throw this one up simply because you recommended it. I felt this one was really beneficial in legacy planning and thinking through, how to prepare your children for an inheritance and kind of thinking
what
through.
would the Rockefellers do?
Yeah, sorry. What would the Rockefellers do? I just don't like to say the name Rockefeller.
Why?
Oh, I don't know. Is
that a thing? You really don't like to say that? Okay. I'll say it for you. What would the Rockefellers do?
Yeah. This one was a recommendation from Mike, and I haven't started this one yet, but this was kind of along the lines of legacy building again.
Complete family wealth.
Complete family wealth. And then Nelson Nash's second book, The Warehouse of Wealth, which I was trying to find that one this morning. I'm not sure where I put that one, but
I have it in my bookcase somewhere, but I didn't come prepared. So it's a real book.
Yeah, I'm working through that book along with a handful of these, but for the most part, I've read all those, and it's intriguing the information that's in there. It helps understand the whole holistically, the IBC aspect, how it fits in there, and even how privatized banking really works. It even talks about IBC as the way to kind of start to you can become your own banker immediately using the infinite banking concept. So those have been very helpful for me in my reading. I continue to keep my antennas up when I hear another resource that kind of talks in that direction, but hopefully that can be beneficial to some of your listeners as well to have some of those books to start looking at.
Well, if they're asking, I'm just going to send them to you. Talk to Jonathan.
Yeah.
So we do need to start wrapping it up. We only got a couple minutes, but maybe I'll leave it or ask this of those of you that are listening or watching on YouTube. Leave a comment. Should we have Jonathan and Carissa back on? I feel like we just scratched the surface. That look from Carissa, I know very well from having lived with her. That was a no. But maybe I can. Okay, they have 4 little kids running around. They were gracious enough to get a sitter to come do this. So thank you for being on today. Anything else you want to wrap up with before I do the ending? Anything else you want to say, IBC in general?
It's worth looking into.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not going to take a one-time looking into, but if you're interested in legacy for your family and interested in wealth building, like it really is a great place to start and a really good place to look into. It's worth the study.
Yeah.
That's why Dave and Mike are here. We're here to help.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole goal in this too, starting this podcast.
Yeah.
Not the most polished. Hopefully the content you're finding relevant and applicable, but give us a shout. The social media stuff's down there. My email is dave@familybankingsolutions.com. Mike's is mike@familybankingsolutions.com. I don't have the phone number up. I don't have it memorized. We have a phone number. Listen to another episode. It's in there. I don't remember what it is. It's 507 something. But give us a call. We'll answer that. Either Mike or I will answer it. But Jonathan, Carissa, thank you for being on the podcast. I really do appreciate it, taking the time and sharing your insight and your wisdom. So thank you. And if the pressure grows and people want you back on, I'll have to arm wrestle you into it or something like that. All right. Well, I appreciate time. See you next time on the IBC guys.